All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Gridiron Gurus podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be doing a full 7 round mock draft for the Dallas Cowboys a couple weeks before the combine, getting things started. Ashton Jeanty at number 12. A lot of needs for the Cowboys across the board. There's a lot of high profile defenders and receivers available here, maybe offensive line if they want to go there as well. But I think the one that would probably make the most sense would be Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, coming off an elite season. Heisman runner-up, 2,600 yards. 30 total touchdowns. Obviously, if you watch college football this past year, you're well aware of who this guy is. Now, I certainly usually don't go for drafting running backs in the first round, especially ones that are coming off a million carries, it seems, 374 to be exact. But this guy's got a lot of tread on the tires. The wear and tear is certainly something to consider. Rico Dowdell also wasn't that bad for the Cowboys over the second half of the year, so they might potentially look to go in another direction, but I think the upside still makes a lot of sense. This is an offense that really sputtered through most of the year with Dak under center, and then of course injuries started to take over, and then he's kind of a lost cause for the rest of the year. But they still need playmakers on this offense. Gianti would be a great start. This guy's ultra physical, great agility for being 217 pounds. He certainly carries his weight or plays like he's a lot, bigger than that, Nick. This is a guy that's also incredibly durable, though. The vision is very good. He's very patient when it comes to zone runs, counter runs, things of that nature. The negatives, far and few, not too many of them. His burst will be interesting to see. We're in the NFL now compared to playing in the Mountain West, so how that come to fruition remains to be seen. But not too many negatives here, Nick. Maybe his long speed, we'll see if he runs in Indy. But the negatives really, are outweighed significantly by the positives he brings to the table, and I think the Cowboys would love to have a player like this in Dallas. Always talk about superstars in this, in the Big D, and I think Gianti's going to fit that mold. He's going to sell a lot of jerseys.
Yeah, I'm with you. Normally, don't take a running back in the first round, but this is an exception. This is a guy you can take in the first round. Ashton Jeanty is an incredibly talented running back, Saquon Barkley-esque, really the top guy in this draft in terms of running backs, and one of the top running backs we've seen in the last 5-10 years in college football. This is a guy that's so good, ultra physical. The agility for him is just phenomenal. 5'9", 217. He is just so good and so fast, really patient. I love the way that he reads the defense, reads and looks for the holes. He stutter steps, patient, really hits the ground running when he needs to, and he has that incredible burst that pulls away from defenders. Just phenomenal. This is a team that I think still needs a running back. They still need to find a way to get a guy that's a franchise guy. I think Rico Dowd was good for this team this past year, and Deuce Vaughn could be solid for them. But overall, I still think that this is a team that they're going to want to add a bigger running back. And it feels like Jerry Jones wants to get some star power on this offense. We saw how this offense was absolutely horrible last year once Dak Prescott went down, and a lot of that was because they were not able to run the ball at all. This is a guy that is going to be able to run the ball. You give him touches, he's going to produce carries. 2,600 yards rushing on the ground last year, 29 touchdowns, just a phenomenal show of production for him. Yes, the jump from the Mountain West to playing in the NFL is a big jump, but I think he can make the adjustment. I think this is a guy that's more than capable of doing so. We've seen him be consistent. He had a really good 2023 as well prior to his dominant, runner-up Heisman showing in 2024. This is a back that I love all over the place. I think this is a guy that you get a big star name here. He's going to sell jerseys. He's going to, bring fans in. You're going to get a lot of buzz and attention in Dallas, and we know that Jerry loves the buzz and the star power. This is a great back, and this is a team that does need a lot of help, but I think taking Jeanty at 12 makes a lot of sense. Just a talented back, and it seems to be a perfect pairing.
Even though Dowdell was really good for them, the running back room is still very weak in terms of depth. Not many options there, and they've not really paid much attention to it the last couple of seasons due to cap restraints, and then also in the draft they just haven't really given much attention to it. So Gianti can still plug a hole, while Dowdell can also still be effective as a running back too. Moving to the second round, I think a great option here to pay attention to this defense. JT Tuimoloau, Ohio State defensive end. This is a guy who was a former top-ranked recruit. Never really, became like a dominant Chase Young mold or anything like that. But this is a guy that consistently got better over the years, and he was great for them en route to winning a national championship this past year. 6'5", 270. I love the size combo matched with what he brings in terms of speed. Very impressive run defender, very instinctive. He's a guy that you can leave out there. You've seen it a lot in terms of read options or him having to do things by himself as a run defender. And for that size, he showed great agility. Was able to, pin guys back inside, push him out wide so his fellow defenders could make a play, or he would just make the play himself. Great run defender, and that's where they struggled immensely last year. Run defense was horrendous. And the biggest negative, he didn't always impress as a pass rusher. The lack of athletic gifts, of course, that's something that isn't going to be as evident when you're that big. In the pass rushing moves is something he has to work on. Well, Micah Parsons is in that room. He can certainly help elevate your pass rush plan to a next level. A guy that certainly has a lot of raw, untapped talent. I think this would be a home run pick in the middle of the second round for the Cowboys, Nick. I think this would be really good because, again, the run defense was abysmal last year. DeMarcus Lawrence, he's a pending free agent. I don't think they're going to bring him back. They need some more guys up front that can make plays, and JT Tumalau is one of them. I would love this fit in Dallas.
I think you plug JT right in on that left side, replace DeMarcus Lawrence, and you have a home run here. I think you have a guy that you can plug in perfectly on the left side and will be really dominant. I think this is a guy that does have to improve some of his moves. Got to get a little bit better with the hands as well. The footwork I think needs a little bit of work as well. Great size though, like you said, good speed, 6'5", 270. Really impressive. You get off as well. Good speed burst there. I really like that. 61 total tackles last year, 21 and a half tackles for loss, 12 and a half sacks on a really good Ohio State defensive line that won the national championship. Obviously, I am a little concerned about some of the pass rushing. I think some of the film is a bit wonky at times, and it does kind of concern me. But I think this is a guy you can plug in on the left side and complement your defense really well. This is a team that could use some more pressure. Obviously, Micah Parsons is a phenomenal player on the right side, but he could use a partner that's dominant. I thought Lawrence was good for this team, but he's most likely not going to return. You can bring in here and plug a guy in that can develop around. I think the interior is solid. Mozzie Smith, I think, is a really good player who was a first-round pick for them that's been good at nose tackle. Micah Parsons, you know what you're going to get out of him. I think they're solid at linebacker as well. So bring in a really good guy that's got great speed. Yes, he's got to develop, but I think you can coach that. I think you can develop as a pass rusher and really work on, I think, the athletic gifts. I'm not as concerned with that as you are. I think this is a guy that can still really show his speed and ability to get after the pass rush if you work on that just a little bit more. Like the hands, like the footwork. The film, like I said, a bit wonky at times. Some it's a little concerning. Sometimes he gets a little stuttered up and struggles against good offensive lines. But this is a guy I think it's a high upside player. And taking him, in the second round, I think you can really roll the dice here and get a guy that's really talented that could really develop and turn into a star.
He did have 12 and a half sacks. 6.5 of those, though, came over the final 4 games, all of them being the CFP games, where the entire defense went berserk over that CFP. So it's great to see him elevate like that against elite competition, but throughout the year, he was inconsistent. So crazy how, they all went, ridiculous, especially on the stat sheet in the CFP. Looking at round 3, I think this would be another very ideal pick for them, one that really fills a need for him. The interior defensive line needs a guy that can step up and be, more consistent producer. Mozzie Smith coming off a pretty abysmal season. Anais Peebles from Virginia Tech, I think, would be a great fit here in the middle. The guy that certainly, lacks upside in terms of pass rush, maybe a bit of a lighter frame, 290, 6'1", not the greatest size. But this guy is an incredibly violent, disruptive player on the interior, has great technique, has a motor, plays to the whistle. He was, I was able to, talk to him at the Senior Bowl, watched him, on a good amount of reps. They were doing, 7-on-7, or no, I think it was 11-on-11, that is. 2 straight run plays he disrupted and blew up those plays in the backfield for a loss. So, this is a guy that can certainly provide a lot for you on the interior. And again, that motor really checks out. He's a guy that wants to be in there making plays. Played for Mike Elko at Duke for a couple years, was very impactful. Then at Virginia Tech, the numbers weren't all that great. 6.5 TFL, 3 sacks, but who cares? It's not about production really. At the next level, we need guys that can step up and make an impact and redirect run lanes. That's something again Dallas needs big time right here, Nick. Back-to-back elite run defenders, I think, would immediately boost this defense. I would love to see this duo in Dallas.
So 2 players here, but 2 players that lack a little bit of pass rushing. I think Mozzie Smith still can develop into a really good player. I still am very high on him. I know you're not as high on him, and you've got some concerns. He did not have a great season. I still think there's a lot of upside there. I think he can still be a really good nose tackle in this league. I don't think you're going to want to punt on him after just 2 seasons. But competition is always good in the NFL, and you can bring in and add some depth. You're going to need depth, obviously. And Peebles is a really solid player. Violent, very disruptive, really good against the run, 6'1", 290, good run clogger. I worry about the pass rush, and it's kind of, Cowboys fans might be a little uncomfortable taking 2 guys in a row here that are, defensive line pieces that are not great pass rushers. But I do think this is a guy that's just a really good, strong run defensive asset. 31 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. Good enough The frame is a bit concerning, but I think this is a guy that's good against the run, right? The technique is solid. Again, another guy where I like the footwork. I like the hands on him as well. He's solid in the interior. I think you can play him in the interior however you want to use him. He's a really solid player. Got good reps at Virginia Tech. A player that's, a guy that you can develop, continue to work on. I think Mozzie Smith, like I said, is a good player, but it's solid to have a backup that's really good and some good competition. Taking a guy like Peebles in the third round who's high upside, can develop, is coachable, I think that could really work out well for this Cowboys defense.
Yeah, I think it's totally fine if these guys aren't going to be the greatest pass rushers on an every down basis. Because again, Parsons is there. He just needs a little bit of help to free things up against the run. He's going to do his thing against the pass, and of course, he still draws double teams, sometimes triple teams. So these guys, Peebles specifically, can still win one-on-one matchups. He's a guy that I'm confident in those scenarios when it comes to pass rushing. So I would love these additions on the defense. That's where Dallas is hurting the most. We're going to move to the final two rounds for Dallas, or the final two slides, that is, in round four. Currently, they have no selections, but they have four of them in round five, all, pretty conjoined together. Connor Colby, a nice guard from Iowa. This is a guy that got better year after year as well. I think he could certainly fill a need with Zach Martin getting older. The interior struggled a good bit this year at times. I think they're pretty confident in what they have at center, and of course, that left guard, Tyler Smith. So I think right guard, future forward looking, I think Colby would be a nice plug and play. I really don't know if Ricky White's going to fall to round five. This is a guy who's a speedy playmaker, can make plays downfield as a pass catcher. Started his career at Michigan State, went to UNLV, and he was phenomenal for them, even though it was an offense that was mainly about running the ball. I don't think he'll fall that far, but in this mock draft, he did. Jordan James, a nice physical runner, a guy who was great balance out of Oregon, had a great year for them. I think that's something that they should look to do, is take two running backs in this draft. You took Gianti round one, take James here, could be a nice value selection. And then Jay Higgins, his run defensibility is something that I think is coveted. He's also a great playmaker in coverage. At least he was in Iowa. I don't know how his speed exactly will translate. But Higgins is a guy who plays the game the right way, great fundamentals, understands his role of the defense and the run defensibility, Nick. It's something they have to do at a pretty weak positional group at linebacker with Overshown likely not going to be back this season. They're going to have to find some younger guys to step up in the meantime. I think Higgins would be a phenomenal value pick here on day three.
I think all four of these picks here make a lot of sense. You can't go wrong with Iowa offensive line pieces. Colby, I think, will just be another solid addition from Iowa going to the NFL. I think maybe you get him a little bit later than 150, but I think he'll still be really solid. Maybe you flip it to take Ricky White at 150 and take Colby at 170. I think that's still good. White, a phenomenal player, right? Loved watching him at UNLV. This is an offense that we watched a lot this year. As we watched the Rebels, try and compete for a playoff berth, they just fell just short in the end. But overall, they're still a really talented team. He had 1,000 yards on 80 grabs, 11 touchdowns. 13.2 yards per grab, was really solid, like you said, in a run-first offense. So he had a lot of productivity in a run-first offense, was a top target. This is a guy at 6'1", 190 with a lot of speed, really good hands, very solid player. Jordan James, I think, would be a really good add. They got to take two running backs, in my opinion. You need to beef up that running back room. This is a very weak unit right now. If I'm Jerry Jones, I'm taking two backs. You might as well get James, who's a really talented back out of Oregon, had a really good season in what was a pass-first offense, 1,200 yards rushing, 15 touchdowns for him on 233 carries. A guy I like at 5'10", 210. That is a bit of a mouthful there, but a guy that I really like that I think can really do a lot for your offense. Good footwork, nice speed, good burst from him. And then Jay Higgins, another solid piece out of Iowa. Iowa linebackers are very productive in the NFL. 124 total tackles this past season for him, 171 the year before that. He has been really solid. 4 picks. He played a little bit more in coverage this past season. Such a good player. When you get a guy that can get triple figure tackles in 2 straight years, you're going to get a guy that's a surefire player. 6'2", 232, helps out a linebacking room that I agree is very shallow, has a lot of issues right now. I don't know if Overshown's coming back. Maris Lafau hasn't really been that great so far. Want to see more out of him. Some other players they need to see that they can develop out of that linebacking core. Bringing a guy in Higgins that's a really good technical player, that's really solid playing in a good defense, would be a really solid add at 175 overall.
Yeah, Leafau was an inconsistent player, but as a rookie, I thought he was overall pretty sound. Another thing on Connor Colby, this is a guy that would be a great fit for this zone rushing attack. He's a pretty good, lateral mover, and there was a lot of zone running at Iowa, and he'd be a good fit here. So I think that'd be a nice selection there. And then Jordan James, he's really good at running between the tackles. So some of my favorite players here going around 5 to the Cowboys. So maybe a little bit of bias because these are some of the top guys we liked watching in college. But at the same time, these are guys that would certainly make an impact, and they would be good fits overall. Moving to, round 6 and 7, the selections, only 3 of them currently. Jamari Caldwell, beefing up that interior once more. It probably won't do much as a 3 technique outside the guard. He struggles a little bit more, but he was a big-time disruptor, especially in Mobile on the interior, playing in that A gap as a run defense clogger. Holland Pierce from Rutgers, a guy that I think might rise up the boards. He has some nice size. I think he has some nice tools, as a potential prospect that we'll get to in a second. Tackle, kind of an interesting position right now for them. I think on the right side, they're kind of set, but at left side, Tyler Guyton wasn't all that great in his rookie season. Obviously, still young. He's a player that can make some things happen, but you certainly need to probably add some depth at some point. I think Pierce at 6'8", 345, with the size, the length, the physicality, and the effort. I think he's a guy that's coachable. You can potentially even maybe work his way into the starting lineup. And then Ja'Cory Brooks, also a guy that made a lot of plays this past season at Louisville at pass catcher. Was very explosive downfield, showcasing his hands and his speed. Him and Pierce, Nick, two guys that might not make it to round 7, but if they do, I think Dallas would love to have them in town.
Codwell and Pierce, two, upside guys. You could develop two projects. I think Pierce is a really solid project out of Rutgers. He could be really solid if you can get him in the 7th round. And then Corey Brooks, a guy who didn't have a great career at Alabama, but ended up going to Louisville and really sort of reinvented himself. 1,000 yards receiving this year, 9 touchdowns, 16.6 yards per grab. A guy that's really talented, a lot of high upside there. If you can get him this late, I think it's a really solid addition. He can play in a lot of different positions. We saw him develop as a pass catcher for the Cardinals this past season, a really solid piece. I think Codwell is a good guy that you can develop. I think Pierce is an offensive line piece that you can really get a lot out of, move him around a little bit, develop some of those skill sets, and get him involved in that that rushing attack, like you said, the zone rushing attack that could really work well for this offense. I think these are solid 3 adds you can get in the later rounds.
Yeah, he was a great left tackle for Rutgers this past season. That's it for today's episode. A lot of picks for the Cowboys, Nick. I like this mock draft. I'm almost in love with it. And obviously, this is not fully what's going to happen, but some of these picks can be right, and some of them can be hits, and some of them can be misses as well. The year they got Dak, I nailed 3 of their picks in the mock draft. I nailed Dak, Zeke, and Jalen Smith. So some of these things can come to fruition, and all those players ended up being great for the Cowboys, Nick. So I hope that they end up with a couple of these players. I'd love the fit. I think this was a good mock draft overall. Indianapolis still to come, though, before we head our way to the draft season. But it's fully in gear, and I think this is a pretty good 7-rounder for Jerry World.
Yeah, this is, NFL draft season, mock draft season. We are here. We're developing. We're getting close to the combine. The Cowboys, they need a lot of help, right? The NFC East has the now defending Super Bowl champions, as the Eagles just got that done, plus the Commanders, who have turned into, the league's upstart team that looks phenomenal. The Giants are there too, but we're not going to talk about them. I don't want to talk about my lowly Giants. The Cowboys need some help. They want to compete with those top 2 teams in the division. They're going to need to find to get some key pieces on the offense and defense. Jerry Jones always likes to do some crazy stuff in the draft, likes to add some crazy moves here and there, likes to take players you don't expect, like say a gamble or two. I think you can get some really solid players though. They got a lot of picks, especially in the 4th round, or the 5th round. That is, sorry. They have a lot. They have 4 picks in the 5th round, some picks in the 6th and 7th round as well. They could really develop and get some good stuff.
That's gonna be it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.